Welcome to my first tutorial. I'm going to be showing you how to make this little trippy digital collage. All of the images in this video are from unsplash.com. This is a royalty-free website. I absolutely love using this because they just have absolutely high quality images completely free. Nearly every image I've made has used photos from this site. There's lots of royalty-free images websites out there, but this is one that I personally go to all the time. So let's get started with our tutorial. First, we will our background. I'll suggest using something that's already quite trippy, like northern lights or a really nice sunset. You can kind of use anything, just choose a background that you really like. I'm going to edit the shit out of this anyway. I've labelled it sky just so I know what I'm working with there. It's good to get into the habit of labelling all your things. Now I'm going to add an adjustment layer, curves. It's good to add a clipping mask and clip this together. I'll show you why later on. And then I'm just going to kind of mess around with it and make some waves with this to get this kind of interesting psychedelic colour. I'm not really doing anything specific, just moving this around completely randomly. Just play around with this and see what colours show up. You can get quite a lot of cool effects just from doing this randomly. So yeah, just play around with that and see how it turns out. So I'm basically going to do this with all of the kind of colour channels, red, blue, green, whatever. Just do this randomly and see what works. If you don't like it, you can always reset it. That's why we've added it as a layer adjustment. If we don't like it, we can just delete that layer adjustment and completely start over. I'm just going to do this to all of the colour channels and just see what I like. I don't want it to look too harsh, but at the same time it's a trippy psychedelic image, so we want all of the colours. Now we're going to add in our land. I'm going to use a moon in this tutorial. You can use pretty much anything, desert, sand, mountains, some good options, but I like space themed kind of thing, so I'm going to use a moon here today. Now we want to rasterize this layer type so that we can select the image. Go to select subject. This usually can cleanly select the subject, but because there's so much contrast and similar colors here, we're gonna have to cut this out manually. Let's cut the rest of this out manually. I'm gonna use pen tool. You don't really have to be neat with this because we're not gonna be able to see the bottom anyway, so I'm just gonna cut this, make selection, click OK, and just delete that. And now we're going to move this down to the bottom. I don't really like how rounded it is personally, so I'm going to resize this. If you just resize it normally, it will resize proportionately. So if you want to flatten it or squish it, you have to hold down Shift. So that's what I'm doing here, just to get a slightly more flat surface. I don't want it to look like we're right on a complete curve, so it just doesn't look aesthetically pleasing to me. The moon's looking a bit bland, so let's go to adjustment, color balance. I'm just going to add this directly on, not as an adjustment layer, because I'm not really bothered about ruining this. So let's just mess around with this. I'm going to choose something that kind of complements the sky. I kind of want this green. So just mess around with color balance. I'm currently on mid-tones. And play around and see what you get. I'm gonna swivel more to the greens because I really want a vibrant green moon. So earlier I mentioned why the clipping mask is important. This is because if it's not applied directly to the object that you want to affect, if it was, for example, above all of the layers, it would apply to every single layer. So if you don't want an effect to apply to every single layer, you need to clip to the image you want it to be linked to. In this case, once we move it back, it doesn't really matter because there is nothing underneath the sky. We wouldn't really need to clip this, but just to make good habits, it's good to keep clipping the adjustment layers to the image that you want them to. So if you did put anything underneath that layer, it's unlikely because that's our background layer, you wouldn't have it affect the whole image. And now we're going to add in our image of our person. You can even add in a picture of you if you'd like, just to make it a bit more fun. And then rename this person. We're going to rasterize the type again so that we can then select subject and cut the person out. Oh, I shouldn't have renamed that actually, because I'm going to cut the person into this layer. We can name this one person and pop the person in. Just resize them however you'd like. I'm just going to make them a tiny bit smaller. And then create a duplicate layer. We're going to make a shadow out of this layer. This is kind of an easy way to make a shadow. This is how I always do it. So what I'm going to do to this shadow first, well, the duplicate layer first, is move it around to where we want our shadow to be. So let's swivel our person around, put them just at a certain angle, doesn't really matter, and move that layer just below the original layer. Next we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Exposure, and set the exposure all the way down on this layer, and then go to the opacity and reduce it to around 40 to 50% for a shadow, but it all depends on the overall brightness of your image, so just mess around with this until it looks right to you. For the last step, we're going to go to Filter, Noise, and add some noise to this person to give a glitch effect. And that's the whole tutorial complete. I hope that this made sense and was comprehensive, because it was my first tutorial. If there was anything you didn't understand, just let me know in the comments below. And if you did follow along and actually made your own image, then I'd love to see it. If you can, tag me on Instagram at Noshin Visuals, or just send it to me directly if you know me personally. I'd love to see what you made.